You give away your freedom. You give away your freedom. You give away your integrity. You give away your agency. You give away your confidence. You give away your voice. You're becoming someone's bitch. It's your choice. Why do you need to go to silent retreat or stay numb? Why? Because they don't want you on the street. They don't want you on protest. They don't want you to question anything. They really want you numb. While they give you something so you feel you're working on your spiritual enlightenment. You're working on your self-delusion and self-denial, which will kill you by end of the day, and your kids, and your country. Okay? This is pandemic now. Okay? Failing for scams and emotional manipulation. More and more people, now we have advanced AI technology. Scams will be so refined, you will not even know it, what's happening. And you will lose all what you earned like this. As a human, you're failing because you're turning your eye on what's happening to your neighbor, what's happening everywhere. You cannot do this, okay? And what will most likely kill you is not a gun. It's not a gun. I was held at a gunpoint so many times in my life and witnessed my parents as well. And what saved me is critical thinking in the moment where you know your life might end. And that critical thinking needs to be on it 24/7, especially if you're living in an environment where you have been threatened, where your safety is jeopardized. If you're a minority, you know that. People of color, you know that. If you're undocumented, if you're less off, if you're exiled, if you're cast out or cut out. Critical thinking is your resistance. It is how you stay human. And also by resistance, I don't mean by putting yourself in danger, but how you also survive. Okay? Your ability to observe, question, and resist may be the most powerful tool you have until the rest of your life. Especially nowadays, the world around you demands of you to react. What reaction is, I'm on it. But you need to respond. Respond is, you will wait until I decide what's okay for me. You will wait. If you ever felt silenced, welcome. In a time of rising autocracy, fascism, tyranny, digital surveillance, AI, spiritual bypassing, your ability to observe, question, and resist may be the most powerful tool you have until the rest of your life. Because we will have more and more challenging times. Absolutely. And if you have lived through dictatorship, genocide, war, like I have, then you already know the most dangerous threat is not dictator, is not your enemy. It's the millions of people and people around you, many times including you, not having ability to do critical thinking, or having a people who trade clarity for comfort, or moral bravery for convenience, or even worse nowadays, for apathy. And what will most likely kill you is not a gun. Is not a gun. I was held at a gunpoint so many times in my life and witnessed my parents as well. And what saved me is critical thinking in the moment where you know your life might end. And that critical thinking needs to be on it 24/7, especially if you're living in an environment where you have been threatened, where your safety is jeopardized. If you're a minority, you know that. People of color, you know that. If you're undocumented, if you're less off, if you're exiled, if you're cast out or cut out. Critical thinking is your resistance. It is how you stay human. And also by resistance, I don't mean by putting yourself in danger, but how you also survive. Okay? If you want to jump straight to the experiential teachings, I'm somatic experiencing therapist for PTSD and trauma recovery. Link is below in the show notes. Welcome to podcast Exiled and Rising. I'm Anna Mael. I'm your host. I'm somatic experiencing therapist for PTSD and trauma recovery. I'm a founder of Somatic Trauma Recovery Center. Link is below. Please follow, review, support, and share. We need more people to hear about this now more than ever. So let's begin. What is critical thinking, and also what is critical thinking somatically defined, how we develop this, right, in our soma, in our body. So by definition, critical thinking is your ability to think clearly, rationally, and independently, okay, analyzing and evaluating facts, information, and also being able to gather all of this and assess evidence to support you, right, and your choices. So, very important. Second, identifying biases, so both personal and external, meaning, is this what I'm assuming? Is this my history, my experience? Is this person history, experience, tradition, culture, conditioning? Or these are the facts, okay? Very important. You need to identify both. Also, more than ever, as evaluating sources for credibility and relevance. We are breeding society of so naive people and kids. You need to always reassess, is this resource, especially now with AI, look at the fake news, fake commercials, fake feeds. Before you jump, you need to ask yourself, what kind of resource is that? What's feeding me? Teach your kids this always. So you need to consider multiple perspectives, resources, before reaching out to your conclusion and making a choice for yourself, okay? And also, you need to have this ability to reflect on your own reasoning process and adjust, right? Always adjust, always pivot. Something what was working for you yesterday, that doesn't mean today or tomorrow this will work for you. So this is essential in decision making, in problem solving, and most importantly, resisting being manipulated. or misinformed, especially nowadays. Okay? You need to use your clear head. Critical thinking, right? So we know all of this, is not just about your intellect. It's not about being smart. It's basically your ability to stay present here in my soma, in my biology, to feel what's happening, to pause, and to investigate. Okay? To investigate. So being able to pause and assess is the best stock investment you will have in your life. The best ROI you will have is your ability to pause, Ooh, look at this. Notice in your body if this is triggering for you now, because I'm not on it. Because I'm not talking with the speed of light, speed of feeds. Okay? Pause, assess, and then decide. Why? Because society, the world around you, demands of you to react. What reaction is? I'm on it. But you need to respond. Respond is you will wait until I decide what's okay for me. You will wait. Okay? So, society, social media, the culture we live, you need to respond on a moment basis. Society wants you numb, wants you reactive, wants you numb, right? And wants you to follow their, whatever that means. Okay. Their loophole or their cycle of how they can make money of you, how can they manipulate, how can take advantage of you. Okay. And it is on me in my assessment lab, okay, call this your assessment lab, Huberman lab, or your lounge in your brain, okay, to pause and then ask what, why, how, who, then. So I'm building that. You're the queen or the king in your own brain lab. There you're asking and you're consciously pausing and asking yourself those questions so you can respond, not react based on your own circumstances, based on your own values, based on your own moral principles you live by, your family lived by, your ancestors lived by, okay? So this is my definition, and you develop your own. In trauma body, okay, I work with clients with complex PTSD and trauma. What I know is that trauma body is wired to react. Fast, automatic, and survival first, okay, which is very good. It's absolutely something what saved you. But also in those moments and in a normal life, we need to develop this pausing, okay? In your amygdala, we need to pause. You need to witness and also ask, is this true? Is this just? Whose voice is this? Am I feeding myself based on my wisdom, based on my values, based on my moral principles? Or this is algorithm feeding me? Who do you want to follow? Are you following yourself? Or you are numb and capable of following only the algorithm or someone else's thoughts? Don't even follow my thoughts. No, 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 no. Teaching is, and teachers will always say, this is my experience. I'm not having answers for you. You can take my experience, assess what's okay for you, and you have your own answers. No one else. No one else. Don't put anyone on pedestal. You can respect them, but don't put them on pedestal thinking they have answers for you. Your body has, your wisdom has. Teachers, therapists, thought leaders, they can only share their experience, okay? So this is how we develop critical thinking. Whose voice is this? And that's where real thinking begins. So let's see what's the real life cost of not having critical thinking developed. So let's bring this home. You will start living under tyranny, fascism, autocracy, in the prison of your own country. Not that you will. You look what's happening in the United States. Oh my God. It's out there. It's out there. They're already living under autocracy and tyranny. Why? No critical thinking. What's very different in Europe, you will see people are going on the streets. They resist their government. So critical thinking is encouraged in the school. In United States, in Canada, absolutely not. Wake up, people, wake up. It's so saddening what's happening. Wake up. Okay. So I'll talk more about this in a second segment. So let's just move to here. How is this affecting your daily life? Okay. So according to the research, we know this. Critical thinking is linked to believing health misinformation. Let me repeat this. You're believing health misinformation. You're not even questioning doctor. Ever. You're just following their one opinion. And so many people can absolutely confirm that, have been misdiagnosed, or they have not even been diagnosed and living with the chronic conditions. No critical thinking, no questioning, not seeking for other evidence. Okay? This is pandemic now. Okay? Failing for scams and emotional manipulation. More and more people, now we have advanced AI technology. Scams will be so refined, you will not even know it, what's happening. And you will lose all what you earned, like this. Okay? Why? A lack of critical thinking. Third, poor job performance and decision making, right? It just, you cannot. It's poor job performance. You cannot make decisions. Or you cannot make your art. Artists, oh my God, right? Artists are not following. They're doing by the beat of their own creation, of their own soul. Right? If you're asking yourself, why I'm not so creative, like what's happening, there is not that drive because you were following, right? Following. In critical thinking, you're not following, you're assessing and then building from inside, right? Your own following. You're following that impulse and body. Okay. So for trauma, so people who are in who survived trauma are still living in trauma, okay? Where that leads? Absolutely. We can see that repeating toxic relationship cycles. Not develop critical thinking. Absolutely not. Leaving everything, all needs, judgments, decision in the arms of their 99% of the time abusive partner. Okay. Not being able to have the practice of critical thinking absolutely destroys your confidence. Very common is misjudging safety and danger. So many people did get killed because they misjudged danger and safety and wanting what will save you. Oh my God. And we will face very, very, very challenging times. Very challenging times. You better have that on it. Okay. You need to have your detectors on it. Especially if you're displaced, if you're facing ICE, if you're undocumented. People of color, you know that. If you didn't have your critical thinking and assessment, who, when, how, what? Oh boy. Right? That's your best survival skill you will have. All of this, how we put into the practice critical thinking in our daily life, link is below. One lesson, very concise, very distilled, not 500 hours, 1 hour and 15, 20 minutes top. It's worth of money because this will save you your life. How you navigate your environment in very challenging years we have ahead of us. Okay. What's very common is also suppressing your voice in a group thinking environment. It's almost like we are becoming in a living of a cult. It needs to be this group thinking. God forbid you have opinion on your own. That doesn't mean you will fight and judge and be condescending. No. Okay. And that leads staying silent when others are harmed. That means losing your moral clarity, your moral bravery, sense of humanity, sense of solidarity, people. Staying silent when others are harmed is not okay. Also, very common is confusing gaslighting with intuition. Don't confuse those two. Okay? Because if someone is gaslighting you and you have that pulse of your own intuition, that's your critical thinking, assessment, your feeling, your gut brain is telling you, assessment brain is telling you. Don't confuse this with gaslighting. But if this muscle is not developed, you will trust that other person who is trying to manipulate you, okay? And when you cannot think clearly, you give away your freedom. You give away your freedom. You give away your integrity. You give away your agency. You give away your confidence. You give away your voice. You're becoming someone's bitch. It's your choice. So why critical thinking is disappearing? So critical thinking is absolutely vanishing, as you can see. Okay. And as critical thinking is vanishing, numbing is flourishing. And we are breeding society and raising kids, new generation of numb and dumb. And the cost of not practicing this, what you have, is now that we have obedience culture. And you're becoming obedient, numb, control citizen. Still good one. Still good one. Paying your taxes, following the rules, but also you're following something what leads you to insidious dying of yourself. And you're following bad people. And by bad people, I mean, look what's happening in the US. Wow. Wow. Okay. You're following AI. You're following pretense on social media. So that following, that blind following, blind obeying, without your resistance, leads you to insidious dying of yourself, and that leads to resignation syndrome. Okay. Check my other episodes about this. And what is dying? So you're this, okay, your vitality is dying, but also what's dying, which is so more, it will be absolutely must, we need to have that, is moral guidance and clarity. And if we don't have that, this leads then to perfect soil to breed fascism, autocracy, tyranny, as we can see it. When we have that, when we have this field of people without their moral clarity on it, without questioning things, you know what happens? Next, Third World War. And I'm so absolutely have right to say that because I survived genocide and I survived 2 wars. I witnessed for almost a decade that soil. No more clarity. No people. That's when everything begins, when we lose our critical thinking, humanity, solidarity, moral clarity. Okay? So fascism doesn't begin with guns. It begins with disinterest of majority of population, by numb people, by apathy. And it begins with people saying, it's not my business, I'm staying in my frequency. Okay? And then by the time surveillance begins, books are banned, protests are criminalized, solidarity is punished, it's too late. So check my episode on self-care is killing our humanity, okay? And rises of tyranny and fascism. So when you're too busy with self-care to practice collective care, too busy managing our nervous system to ask who is being disappeared. You're building that soil for tyranny, where you will lose your freedom. Not you will, you lost the freedom if you're in the United States. So we need to do both. And what's missing here is critical thinking. Why? Because autocracy, fascism, right? Tyranny, those systems, they need you to stay numb. So let me say this again, clearly and with care. Let it land, okay? Let it land in you. Autocracy does not need you. Autocracy doesn't need you to agree. It only needs you to obey, to stay silent, to get too tired, to care. That's why we will see cost of living is rising, wages are the same, and many of us are working 2-3 jobs to pay the bills. When you're so exhausted, you cannot think about your country where you live. They want you tired, okay? Self-care industry is the most dangerous thing now for the critical thinking and for building moral clarity. So let me repeat this. So right now, this is me using my critical thinking by saying self-care industry is the most dangerous right now because it's developing society of people who are not practicing critical thinking. They're staying numb. They want you to confuse neutrality with morality. Okay. They want you to watch your breath and not the news. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? They want you to think you're doing something nice, but as a citizen, as a human, you're failing because you're turning your eye on what's happening to your neighbor, what's happening everywhere. You cannot do this, okay? So yes to the self-care and seeing what's happening, what's around, questioning things, acting on it, not sitting on a meditation cushion as only valuable spiritual thing you are doing in your life. No. Both. That end is missing. We need to stitch both. Okay. So basically, okay, so why autocracy needs you to stop thinking? Autocracy and fascism cannot rise in a thinking culture. And fascism, tyranny, they don't begin with guns. They begin with emotional numbness, obedience, and disinterest, apathy. And you want more people to be in a state of resigning. And on this hand, right, the hand of who is feeding, who is that behind tyranny and autocracy? We know those names and countries, right? They're feeding also small group of people with hatred and false authority and supremacy. But this is very small group of people. But guess what? They're on it. They're on it. They're using their thinking brain. They're not numb. They're not in meditation cushions. They're clearly not. Okay? So fascism, tyranny, those cultures of obedience, it's very common in communist country, okay? I was raised in a communist country. The joke is I'm a communist in recovery. So people who are coming from communist country, right? Eastern Europe, China, right? People who are coming from very religious backgrounds, right? People from a family with authority, with father who is on the throne. Okay. And fascist cultures, they need you not to ask questions. You're not asking questions. You're just following their orders. You need to stay overwhelmed. You need to stay so exhausted that you don't have a time to question anything. Okay? They want you to obsess with your own self-help instead of solidarity. So think about who is feeding that self-care industry. Who is feeding those retreat centers of mainly 1%ers, because there is nothing spiritual about those centers now. Everyone who is a true spiritual person and leader will tell you now, they're facing true spiritual leaders now, spiritual people. They're facing their own trauma because what they believed in is now turning, oh my God. It's like a stock exchange. Awful. There is nothing spiritual about this. They feel robbed. Robbed by many and robbed by values, by legacy they built for centuries. Okay. So who is feeding those people? Why do you need to go to silent retreat or stay numb? Why? Because they don't want you on the street. They don't want you to protest. They don't want you to question anything. They really want you numb. While they give you something so you feel you're working on your spiritual enlightenment. You're working on your self-delusion and self-denial, which will kill you by end of the day, and your kids, and your country. Okay? So they literally want you to watch your breath, to notice your breath, instead of noticing and watching your government. Okay? Check my episode. You need justice, not breath work. And share this. More people need to know about this. I'm not on social media except on podcast, YouTube and podcast. Okay? Please share. Because you cannot reclaim your nervous system, your spirituality, if you're abandoning your neighbor. And you cannot heal your trauma while silencing your moral clarity and your moral duty. Because look, in the United States now, I live in Canada. In United States, anti-immigration laws, there is a erasure of critical thinking and voices. Look, they're raising their stand-up comedians. Oh my God, professor. They're criminalizing protests. So now you cannot even go to the protests. They're silencing therapists, coaches, influencers. Probably they will silence me. So sign up to Exiled and Rising community membership. It's free. Link is below. Of course they will silence. God forbid you are using your own head. So you need to question, who is that who is feeding this land of apathy, spiritual bypassing, and numbness? And why? So go 5 steps above, use that big landscape. Okay. And what happened, one of the things also what's happening here, and how, look at the digital overload and algorithm control. Algorithms are built to manipulate, right, your emotion, not to support your reflection. Do you know there was a Stanford research showed that over 70% of students couldn't tell the difference between news and paid ads? That's why I'm saying, parents, please, you're raising kids of numb and dumb. If your child is not able to make a difference between news and paid ads, that's terrifying. They will be played. Oh boy. They will be played like this. So don't think you're failing. You're being programmed. Okay? And this is a wake-up call. Second, what led to all of this is standardized schooling, right? There is no reward for independent inquiry. So no reward. If there is independent thinking, you are marked as someone who is not obedient. And they reward obedience and performance. They reward followers. Followers, not doers. And by I mean not to be rude or to raise narcissistic being. No. You know, many times people are saying, oh, French are so rude. Actually, they're not rude. They're highly developed in their school. They're developing critical thinking all the time. But it might feel like a resistance as they're contrarians. But actually, no, it's a very different culture in Europe than in Canada and in the United States, right? Parents who are homeschooling, yeah, they're developing critical thinking, right? So those kids, their group thinking is rewarded. They have lower scores in creative problem solving and independent reasoning. By the time we reach our adult life, many of us are trained to follow, not to question. And you know that, especially if you're coming from communist country, okay? Church, cultish culture, authoritarian families, very traditional families, patriarchal families. As a woman, you just have to obey. This is it. Also, what led to lack of critical thinking is economic survival mode. When you're exhausted, when you're underpaid, when you're fighting to keep your home, to just pay bills, you don't have a bandwidth to reflect or even to ask anything. You're on the autopilot. Okay, so lower income families, all families nowadays, everyone who is surviving to pay the bills now, they are living paycheck to paycheck. So poverty and burnout are tools that kill discernment. When you're too exhausted to think, you obey. Okay. And also, what led to this, I mentioned this before, it's a wellness and spiritual bypassing. I will repeat myself over and over again. Because we have people in the prime years who are not showing up. They're not showing up. Look at the United States. Oh my God, come on. Wake up, people. Wake up. It's not fair. I don't know. Because you can meditate every day and you can ignore genocide. You can journal and still stay silent about injustice. You know, self-help is billion-dollar industry that teaches personal peace without public responsibility. People, it's both. For you who are so invested now in human rights, please do the personal care. I have so many people who are activists. They're so burned out. They're not doing any self-care. Both. We need to do both. Okay. So let's see why this critical thinking. So we have all of this, okay, on one side, but why is critical thinking is hard for the trauma body, okay? I'm a therapist for PTSD and trauma recovery. When you have been trained to survive, not to think, critical thinking feels like betrayal. Questioning what your culture is doing now, your religion, your president, a party you voted, can feel like a betrayal on personal level. And it can feel as you're betraying your own community, as you're betraying your culture, betraying your religion or your spiritual group, your place of belonging. It can feel as betrayal of your parents, who might fully believe in something what is not just for you, because they're so designed and programmed and conditioned to think only one way. Okay. So you might feel as now I'm losing the sense of belonging. It's a big reshift on the nervous system, right? Because it feels that change, it can feel, and it feels like a betrayal. Okay. But what if betrayal is not what's happening? What if living by your moral values, by your honor, by your dignity is actually what's happening? Okay? Because the trauma body was trained to obey, to stay small, to stay safe, right? Good. We had to do that. not to question, not to confront. And also that's how obedience in tyranny begins. Not with weapons, but with unchallenged obedience. Let me repeat this. Tyranny begins and abuse begins. Abuse, okay, abuse can happen in a home, but let's say the tyranny, the fascism, the start of the war, bigger landscape, it's happening in your country. It starts by unchallenged, obedient people. Hitler didn't start suddenly war in 1939. No. It was way before. It was a build-up. It was a build-up. Years before that, I witnessed build-up in my own country, okay? I'm a Serbian from Croatia. The build-up was my home was detonated 2 years before I was exiled. Build-up. And everyone was quiet. Too terrified to speak. Or they were thinking they were betraying their own people if they say anything. Okay? It's build-up of the things what will happen. Okay. So think about this, what blocks you from critical thinking, okay? So here's what stops you from thinking clearly. People pleasing, it's so common, right? I don't want to upset anyone. Yes, absolutely. Shame. I don't know enough to speak up. Fear of being isolated. I will lose my community. Of course. Spiritual bypassing. This is a low vibe. This is bad karma. You're being negative. Yeah. But let me tell you this. Silence is not spiritual. If you're spiritual enough, and every spiritual leader will tell you that, silence is not spiritual, and not acting on it is not spiritual. Spiritual is I'm witnessing, I'm expanding my capacities for pleasant, unpleasant, from the space of neutral capacities. And third one is to act on it. Every spiritual person will confirm that. You're not spiritual if you're witnessing, but you're not acting on it, period. And also silence is not neutral, absolutely not, because when injustice is happening, basically you're on the side of abuser or a Nazi culture. Okay, that's not spiritual. Okay, so let's see where critical thinking fails without embodiment. So we can talk, right? But we need to experience this in a nervous system so we have this muscle. Okay, this is what I teach. All of this, how we put into the practice critical thinking in our daily life. Link is below. One lesson, very concise, very distilled, not 500 hours, 1 hour and 15, 20 minutes top. It's worth of money because this will save you your life. How you navigate your environment in very challenging years we have ahead of us. Okay. So I worked with thousands of clients from war, from narcissistic abuse, authoritarian systems. So here's what I know. You can have facts. You can have all facts. And you can still follow your abuser if your body is not receiving that. And know that this is your choice. It's very subconscious. Okay. It's very subconscious. So critical thinking needs embodiment, okay? Because you're not living that. You're not feeling that on your cellular level. And you can have all facts, right? But if you're not acting and following, if there is no that muscle build, you're following obediently, and you don't want that. You don't want to get played or abused and manipulated. Okay? So, somatic truth about all of this. Critical thinking is not just logic. It's a nervous system practice. It's a nervous system practice and somatic practice. So how do we implement all this? Step by step, somatic teaching lessons I run. The link is below. Sign up. It's absolutely worth of your independent thinking and your confidence and your life. As I close this episode today, if you don't practice critical thinking, someone else will do your thinking for you. And if you don't anchor your moral compass, the algorithm will replace it. If you don't name injustice now, you will wake up with no language left or energy left to resist. And I will say it again, thinking clearly in a culture of obedience is one of the most radical and important thing you can do now. You don't need another affirmation. You don't need another vision board. You need to pause. You need to develop on a soma level this muscle of questioning and thinking, even if your voice shakes. Absolutely. Even if you have been taught to stay silent, question. People in United States, my heart goes to you. Please question. Speak. You can say, this is not okay. I don't agree. It doesn't need to come from the place of rage. Even if your nervous system begs you to disappear, remember, numb individuals create numb societies, and numb societies make room for tyranny and Nazi culture. And you will be then either Nazi or obedient one. And please, all historians, there's a great woman, H.C., I don't know her full name. She can back this up. Everyone can back this up. Lawyers, judges, for God's sake. Why they're not talking about? Where are the lawyers? Where are the judges? Okay, they know history. Historians, please. Professors, I'm a therapist. But it's very important to know the history, and history repeats itself. Okay? And you don't want to get played, because in a war, there is no fair play. You have your own intelligent brain and wisdom. Absolutely, you do have that. And you have capacities to teach others, to teach your kids, to use their brain, the critical thinking, and humanity. So teachings, sign up below. I'm Anna Mael. This is Exiled and Rising. Subscribe. Please share. Please share. Support. And remember, it's never too late to start learning anything. You have wisdom. You have answers. and use the tools, and start practicing them. Until next time, much care. Much care.